welcome to Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruwoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Sustain that industry. So if government does not have much money, they should find an enabling environment.
Now, what are these issues? The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange, where we talk about everything that has to do with business, finance, national issues, and the economy. I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development with our conversation. Today, we'll be looking at effective communication in the workplace, what you need to do as an employee or as an employer to ensure that you have effective communication in the workplace. These are more of the things we'll be looking at today. And as you spend the next 3 hours with us, we are set to give you the best of programming to make your day remarkable and memorable. Let's go on this short break, and when we return, we'll kick off with news update. Stay with us.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowo Popo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the eco-greeting tradition. The three wise men, Arometa, Suk, Enlightenment. Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an Armed Forces Remembrance Cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge, ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souk Enlightenment.
Good morning. Welcome to the Morning News Update on SIG News. I am Blessing H. Remember that Morning News Update is your home for latest updates as it relates to business, economy, development, and policy. Now let's begin from Nigeria, where we're reaching you live. The Nigerian Senate has confirmed Ola Olukoyede as the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, following his nomination last week by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Similarly, the Red Chamber also confirmed the appointment of Muhammad Hamajuda as the Secretary of the Anti-Graft Agency, just as the appointment of Alima Shehu as the Chief Executive Officer of the National Social Investment Program Agency, NSIPA, was also confirmed. These individuals were nominated last week by the President. The federal government has unveiled a centralized hub for tertiary education services designed to bring educators, students, and the academic community together. The Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman, says the Innovation, Tertiary Education Research, Applications and Services TIRAS is an information technology-based platform aimed at repositioning, strengthening, and rekindling hope in the country's tertiary education system. He ordered that the federal government will continue to provide beneficiary institutions with unwavering support to fully realize the potential of TIRAS. Other services that will be available on the platform includes sponsored mobile internet access, EgoScan for plagiarism checking, among others. The Executive Secretary of the National Senior Secondary Education Commission, Dr. Iyela Ajayi, has urged the federal government to include the NSS-EC Gazette Act 23, which allocates 2% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund in the 2024 budget. He ordered that this fund would play a vital role in revitalizing senior secondary education across the nation, and the Commission, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Education, is actively working on the national policy on senior secondary education, which will rejuvenate the subsector. He appealed for adequate funding to meet the NSS-EC's mission of elevating senior secondary education to global standards, addressing critical tasks like needs assessment in schools, updating the database of senior secondary schools, and enhancing teacher capacity development, all of which have been hampered due to inadequate funding. In response, Senator Lawal Adamu, chairman of the Senate Committee on Basic and Secondary Education, assured that the committee will prioritize the Commission's funding needs. Away from education, the Conservator General of the National Park Service, Dr. Ibrahim Goni, has said the federal government is set to take control of 10 new national parks between November and December 2023. Goni made this revelation during a meeting with the 9 commissioners representing the 10 newly established national parks in Abuja. He outlined the plan to officially hand over the parks to the federal government within the specified time frame and ensure their inclusion in the national budget for the year 2024. Goni explained that the approved national parks are currently in the process of being gazetted by the Federal Ministry of Justice. According to him, once gazetted, these parks will attain full-fledged national status and the state governors will transfer ownership to the federal government. While stating that most states have already secured office accommodations and administrative facilities to ensure a smooth transition for the 10 new national parks, local communities have expressed their support and willingness to cooperate, a move that is expected to bring development and employment opportunities to their areas. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Communication Commission (NCC) says plans are underway to provide affordable and reliable broadband services accessible to all Nigerians. This was disclosed by the newly appointed Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Dr. Aminu Maida, at his head office in Abuja. Dr. Maida stressed the importance of strategically diffusing effective broadband infrastructure across the country. to support the vision of the federal government and the Ministry of Communications, Innovations and Digital Economy. And he also acknowledged telecom industry's role in facilitating digital transactions, e-governance and socio-economic initiatives, while noting that his priorities include improving network quality of service. He highlighted challenges such as right-of-way, ROW, and telecom infrastructure security, adding that the move supports President Tinubu's vision for job creation and the digital economy. But still in Nigeria, the Lagos State government has announced its intention to shut down bars, churches, clubs, mosques, and companies that are causing environmental disturbances in the state. The Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources revealed this information in Lagos during a management meeting with Dr. Babatunde Ajayi, the General Manager of Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA, and directors in the agency, Mr. Tokumbo Wahab. According to the Commissioner, these organizations should review their operations strategies following accepted international best practices. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Examinations Board has finalized its preparations for a one-day sensitization program aimed at revalidating examination codes for public and approved private schools within the state. Now, according to the director of the board, Adebayo Onsolu, the purpose of this exercise is to educate and inform various associations involved on the necessity for public and approved private schools in Lagos to undergo the recalibration exercise to ensure accurate record keeping and enhance the integrity of school information in the board's database. Orinsolu stressed that representatives from relevant associations, particularly their presidents and secretaries, are expected to participate in this sensitization program. The list of anticipated organizations includes the National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, Association of Islamic Modern Schools, League of Muslim Proprietors, among others. According to him, the exercise is set to run from November 1 to November 15. In an effort to bolster dry season famine and ensure food security in Nigeria, the Lower Niger River Basin Development Authority, LNRBDA, is gearing up to introduce solar-powered irrigation pumps by 2024. This announcement came during the closing ceremony of a 3-day training program in Ilorin, Kwara State, organized by Synergy Impact Consultants Limited for 90 selected LNRBDA staff. According to the managing director of the authority, Dr. Adeni Sahid Aremu, noted that this will reduce dependence on petrol and enhance dry season farming while reducing food prices. In addition to solar power, LNRBDA plans to explore hydraulic systems for water distribution to fields and improve the capacity of staff to fulfill the authority's objectives, missions, and visions. Now, before we turn it to other parts of Africa, let's go on a quick break. To stay tuned. After bringing you stories from Nigeria, Zambia is a next point of call as the National Service ZNS says it is working to expand the distribution of affordable mealie meal beyond ShopRite stores with the goal of making it accessible at market-reflective prices. The effort includes plans to acquire land in all 10 provinces to boost maize production and ensure a consistent supply of mealie meal. The organization is delivering over 7,060 bags of 25-kilogram mealie meal to ShopRite outlets in Lusaka and expanding distribution to Melissa Supermarket. Despite recent price allegations, the government maintains that the initiative is progressing as planned, with millers ready to provide cost-effective milling meal to chain stores. Still in Africa, Zambia has signed a Memorandum of Understanding MOU with its official creditors to address the country's debt crisis. The Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, views this agreement as a means to allocate more resources for development projects and facilitate economic growth. According to the Executive Director of CTPD, Isaac Owanpopo, the MOU will help to relieve Zambia's debt burden and allow for increased resource allocation to development areas. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva also commended Zambia for this achievement, underscoring its importance in ensuring low-term debt sustainability. Now, with each official creditor initiating their internal processes to formalize the agreement, Zambia's Ministry of Finance and National Planning is optimistic that this MOU will further support efforts to secure a comparable agreement with private creditors, ultimately resolving the debt overhang and advancing the nation's economic development. We're turning now to the story that says the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, has announced $100 million in emergency aid for the Gaza Strip in response to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The aid was pledged during an extraordinary meeting of the GCC's foreign ministers in Muscat. The funds are designated for an urgent humanitarian relief operation to assist those affected by the conflict in Gaza. The GCC, consisting of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, convened this meeting as the situation in Gaza remained dire, with hundreds of people killed, including an attack on a Gaza hospital compound housing displaced individuals. The specific method of delivering the aid to Gaza was not specified in the statement, but efforts are being made to transport it through the Rafah border crossing, which is not under Israeli control. GCC's Secretary General Jassem Mohammed Abdul Dawi also called for an immediate halt to military escalation targeting civilians in Gaza and rejected any calls to forcibly displace the Palestinian people from their region. The Council of Economic and Development Affairs, CEDA, has received an update from the Public Investment Fund, PIF, on the progress of several major projects such as Diriyah, Neom, Kidia, the Red Sea Project, and Rushden. The detailed presentation included project advancement, timelines, and their alignment with the goals of Vision 2030. During a virtual meeting, the Council celebrated the inauguration of the first phase of the Red Sea Project and the commencement of the operations at the Red Sea International Airport's temporary terminal, which is anticipated to bolster the kingdom's tourism sector. Furthermore, the Council also acknowledged efforts to ensure market affordability and combat monopolistic practices in the private sector. Additionally, the Council reviewed international financial institutions' reports commending the kingdom's sustained growth and global economic challenges and its robust financial reserves to mitigate international fluctuations and risks. Moving now to China, where Chinese smartphone manufacturers stress the intrinsic connection between environmental, social, and governance (ESG) principles and the company's plans for an upcoming initial public offering (IPO. The corporate senior vice president at Honor, Martin Shu, noted that ESG has been integral to the company's culture since its inception, and their focus on areas such as accessibility, environmental sustainability, and transparent governance is key. In addition to publishing its first ESG report, the company added that the company is committed to achieving carbon neutrality in its operations by 2045. Shu explained that as the smartphone industry caters to a demanding consumer base seeking cutting-edge technology like 5G services and artificial intelligence-generated content, linking their research and development efforts with ESG principles is essential to meeting customer expectations. In another development, X, formerly known as Twitter, has announced a testing phase for an annual subscription fee of $1 for new users in an initiative named Not a Bot. This move, designed to combat spam and bot activity, will initially be piloted in New Zealand and the Philippines. X clarified that users who opt not to pay the subscription fee will still be able to view posts and follow accounts, but won't be able to post or interact with other users. The initiative aligns with CEO Elon Musk's efforts to address bot activity, which he raised as a concern before his acquisition of the company in October 2022. Elon Musk's plan to transition Twitter to a subscription fee model has been in the works, with these fees serving as an anti-bot measure. The story completes the package this morning on the Morning News Update. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for analysis and more on Early Exchange. I am Blessing AG. Good morning.
Factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's Early Exchange, and it's time for us to review the major headlines trending today. And as usual, we have our in-house analysts who we call the wise ones. The wise men are here. And we're being joined by Idahosa Osamanze, who has been in Abuja, but is now here with us in the studio. Glad to have you back.
Femi, good morning. Good morning, viewers. Blessing.
Good morning, sir. Good to have you here.
A very pleasant morning.
Great. How's your trip to Abuja?
Oh, great. Excellent.
You look refreshed and more relaxed.
I think maybe it's because you sent me last about 4 days ago.
No, but I think that because there's less traffic congestion in Abuja, less tension in the environment, so that could be why he's looking so relaxed.
We could have suggested maybe you stay in Abuja, but we need you here more in Lagos in the studio. So glad you have you here.
I'm comfortable in Lagos.
All right, let's start with the first story, which is that of the new EFCC chairman. The Senate has confirmed the appointment of Ola Olukoyede as the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. You know, this he was nominated by the president last week. His name was sent to the Senate for proper confirmation, official confirmation, and that was done yesterday. We have a new sheriff in town now, the new handler when it comes to EFCC. And then a lot of people have been having, coming up with different reactions, mixed reactions anyway. Some are in support, some are not in support. Some are saying he doesn't have the 15 years experience when it comes to the EFCC Act, the provision by the EFCC Act. But importantly, Senate has confirmed him and is the new EFCC chairman. Idauza, let me start with you. What's your take?
Well, congratulations to the EFCC chairman, and I was also very happy at the screening, the position he took on corruption issues in Nigeria. On Monday in Abuja, when the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Rep was being unveiled, having listened to people from the two arms of government, heard the Accountant General of the Federation speak, the Acting Auditor General speak, and then some lawmakers, and then the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and then the deputy chairman of the House of Rep. So I came to a conclusion, and I said to them in that committee, what I saw was a conflict between what the executive thinks and what the legislatures are thinking. And that has always been accounting for the tension in the system fighting corruption. And I said to them, the problem in Nigeria is not corruption. And everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not our problem. What's our problem? Our problem is weak institutions that has no power to act. Our problem is a system that we put in place that gives room for people to manipulate it. Now, when you remove this, you will see a lot of things work. So I told them, look, in the front triangle, what people always say is the fact that you have a pressure. Now, when you have a pressure, then you see an opportunity. And then, of course, now on the other leg, the third leg, you have to weigh the consequence of your action. Now, if your rationalization of the consequence of what you're about to do, that the benefit far outweigh the cost, the chances are that you will want to take what does not belong to you or what belongs to the state. Now, so how do you do it? So I told them there, rather than fight alligators in the swamp, drain the water, then the alligator will find their way out. It's as simple. So our biggest problem has never been corruption. Our biggest problem is our failure to adopt systems that makes it impossible for human beings to exhibit their negative traits. The ball is on the court of the National Assembly today, and that's what the new chairman puts on there. So we spend more money fighting corruption. He made an example yesterday that if you steal 10 naira, for you to prosecute and recover that thing, you will likely spend 3.6 kobo to fight it. But if you have to prevent it, you are likely to spend 1 kobo to prevent it. So emphasis should be more on prevention than on fighting. Now, at the National Assembly, they are saying we are supposed to be checking what the executive is doing. Now, executive is thinking that every time the National Assembly is calling them for action, they are calling them thief. And that's not strange in our environment. Even in our homes, we find this. If you give your wife 20,000 to go to the market, and when he comes back and you are asking, how did you spend the money? The next thing that you will hear is that, do you think I stole the money? Because we are always afraid to give accounts. And I think this is where the problems are. So for us, as a country going forward, what we need to do is ensure that we reduce the interference of humans in the processes of selection. He talks about the contract scam in 3 years, over 2 trillion lost. Now, we can avoid all this by simply adopting e-procurement. So you don't know the bidder. Everybody apply online. They are pre-qualified online. So you don't need to settle anybody. If the fund is not there to fund the contract, the system will not work. So nobody will be awarded contract that is not backed up by fund. Nobody will be seeking you and saying, come and give me kickback. So you process your payment online. If you are qualified, nobody will say you are scheduled today and say, give me 20 naira so that I can move your schedule up. Now, once we adopt all these malfeasance we see in the system will naturally disappear. Because most of the corruption cases we see in public service is happening at the procurement level. And this is because we are still manual in the way we are doing something. Somebody need to carry your file. And for that person to carry your file, you will need to grease somebody's palm. And once we can remove all these things, I think a whole lot of things can really work for us. So we wish him well on this new endeavor, and we pray that himself will not, at the end of the day, be like his successors, because we have this trajectory now in the EFCC that at the end of every administration, every chairman seems to have a problem.
They seem to live in a very controversial manner, and we hope he's not going to fall into that trap. I was listening to him yesterday. One of the things he talked about was the issue of contract fraud, what you were trying to talk about. You know, he identified one of those things as one of the critical things, you know, that commission needs to work on. You have a situation where people get contracts, you know, the money is being awarded, but they don't execute the contracts. And when it comes to even the process of documentation, you can't have the necessary figures and statistics to back up such kind of contracts. And like he said, there's a need for that commission to sit up to whom much is given, much is expected.
Yes, the controversy notwithstanding that Olukoyede is a lawyer and not a security expert, or has not been in any security force in Nigeria. Well, like I said, when that issue was first brought up, that there are reasons why, I believe that there are reasons why the president chose to set aside the EFCC Act and appoint someone who's a lawyer when the Act states otherwise.
No. I don't think the Act was set aside. You see, people are giving varied interpretations to that particular section of the Act. And I think what is important is that we must realize, you see, when we come to issues like this, you have opposition on one side and you have the government on the other side. The opposition has taken one side to look at the issue. And this issue, of course, I was listening to Bani the other day, and Boala talk about the same issues, and they have different contrary positions on the issues. What the Act says is that the person must have been in the law enforcement. Now, to be in the law enforcement doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be a hardcore law enforcement officer. So you can be in police. There are a lot of people who are in the police force who are not policemen, but they are civilians working in the police. So if you take the literal interpretation of that law, the man, having served as chief of staff in that enforcement agency and rose to become the secretary of that agency, it is very difficult for you to say that the Act was set aside. No, because the Senate who approved the rule would have been able to point it out, because the person is the lawmaker who writes the law that can tell you what they had in mind while they were writing the law.
Okay, but what I was about to say is that it is assumed, or it is looked at to be set aside, because what you just said, those are like technical interpretations. When you look at it in the context of this, in the context of that, they're kind of contextual and not just
No, it's what is written.
Yes.
What is written on the Act?
The general interpretation
now this is
of
what,
it.
yes, you are putting interpretation. Lawyer put interpretation. You see, this is where people could go. Just go to the court and then you will sort it out. Because anything that is written in law that has no ambiguity in it, what's the ambiguity? Now, if you say it must be a serving policeman, for example, it will be very clear that the law says it's a serving policeman. And now you are appointing somebody who is not a serving policeman. The law says he must have worked in the law enforcement. EFCC is a law enforcement agency. So if the man has worked in EFCC, first as chief of staff to the chairman, and then second as secretary to the commission, which is the second most ranking person. Senate cleared him to become secretary. The current secretary of EFCC is also a civilian, but he has been in the system for over 20 years. So you can't say this person has no cognate experience because he was not a policeman. That's what I'm saying. So there's no place it was written that this person must be a policeman or he must be a soldier or military person. So the law simply says he would have served in the law enforcement agency. And then, of course, the other aspect that was argued was the fact that he has a cognate experience. Now, when you talk about cognate experience, it means that you actually have experience within that domain. Now, look at where the man has worked all his life. He has worked as compliance officer in all the companies where he worked. He has studied fraud. He has worked in fraud detection departments. So you can't say he doesn't have cognate experience to deal with these issues. That's the point I'm making.
But my point is this, that regardless of the controversy around it, I think a lawyer is the best person to catch you when you've committed crime, because there may be some things that the ordinary person may overlook. Maybe the law enforcement officer, so to speak, which in this case it's been broadened now to not just being a policeman, may be looking at physical evidence, but the lawyer looks at documentation. What had gone wrong? What did you not comply with? Looks at the rules, look at the laws and every other thing. So I believe those were the considerations of Mr. President and the considerations as well of the House to say this is who we need. Someone who knows the law, someone who knows what it takes to break the law and what it takes to actually enforce the law, to head a commission like that. So I think we should just expect him to walk the talk and let the controversy or whatever other feelings to die.
And interestingly, let me inform you, a group of persons have approached the court, to make interpretation of this, and let's see how it goes, because the argument is here or there. But now that you have a court case, now let's see how it goes. And then for me, my advice to the new UFCT chairman is to ensure that he's focused, irrespective of the distractions and the controversy. All right, let's move on. Now to education, the federal government has unveiled a centralizer for tertiary education services designed to bring educators, students, and academic community together. Now there's a new information technology-based platform now that the federal government has unveiled, and the platform is to rekindle the hope of tertiary education system, and is to reposition, strengthen, and bring all the stakeholders together. When you talk about educators, students, and academic, like an e-community for tertiary institutions in Nigeria. We've been talking about the issue of technology, deploying technology to education services. Idauza, what's your take on this?
Well, I don't know what to say here. Yeah, but I think these are really long overdue, where we really don't need the Ministry of Education to begin to tell the universities what to do, when especially they are the ones who are playing dominantly in that terrain. And I think one of the reasons given by the minister was the fact that during the lockdown, during the COVID period, a lot of the public institutions were really not able to go online to go to do their academics, and some people lost full year, some people 2 years, and some universities as we speak have not been able to recover their academic calendar. This is because they also refuse to actually deploy technology to do some of all these things. And I don't think these are big issues that really we need to celebrate. We should be putting our heart in very hardcore issues that also affect our education. Still on the PAC meeting on Monday, one of the issues I also raised with them is the fact that as a nation where we are now, especially looking at our very high debt profile, and also looking at the fact that we are in a serious war, really economic war, between the most civilized and advanced economies of the world, emphasis need really to be on hardcore research and development in our institutions of learning. And this is the only way we can catch up. Now, if we keep looking at issues that are flimsy like this, I don't think this is what we really need to do. The Minister of Education needs to sit down and really interrogate the curriculum of our institutions. And this, for me, is what is critical. We have an educational institution that does not favor research. It's not just to give paper certificate to people so that people go to university and then they graduate 4 years. And after 4 years, what can they do really? Nothing. This is not what we will need to do to get us out of the trouble. Everybody really, as we speak now, understand that our institutions, our tertiary institutions, they need to up their game. We need to get to that point where we are beginning to produce geniuses from our children who will pioneer inventions. Then we will have goods that we can take to the international community or market to sell. This for me is where the issues lies, and this is where the emphasis should be. Anybody can produce an app. Private universities have done that. And while this were on and they were running, there was no news on the internet about somebody producing an app. So we should look at the real core things, and this for me is how do we redesign our curriculum such that when we train an engineer, an electronics engineer, he should be able to build an electronic application. When you train a civil engineer, he should be able to build a house. Or a mechanical engineer who is able to actually build a car. And this is where the conversation should center around. So that at the end of the day, we are really not just pushing people out of school and pushing them out, but we are really pushing people who, when they finish schools, they can fit into the workplace and then deliver value, as it were.
There are other services that will be available on this platform that has just been launched, includes sponsored mobile internet access, Ego Scan for plagiarism. Now that caught my attention because we see a lot of plagiarized work in the educational system, from textbooks, from books that are supposed to guide students on different courses, supposedly written by maybe lecturers. A lot of them are plagiarized, or some of them are plagiarized, and it's like a thing of lifting. You go to another book, you're seeing almost the exact words that you found on one particular textbook being written, but it's bearing the name of another person. Even for project works, it has also made students lazy that they can just copy project works of former students and then put their names on it, assignments, a lot of things. So it doesn't encourage ingenuity. It doesn't encourage people to be studious. It doesn't even encourage research, because why would you want to stress yourself to do all of that? People are doing project work and they're not even bothering to even give out questionnaires and do the sample well and to make sure that everything is written by them, because you can just copy everything, change the name and change a few things. But with this, I believe it will encourage people to pay attention to their work, write well. If you're writing the book, then you should be the author of the book and not be the one just doing lifting and selling to students to buy.
Yeah, but I think it's actually put it right. There's no real original work, because every work you see is actually somebody else's work. And I think the issue here is the fact that institutions need to also teach research method very well, so that especially when people do literature review, they know what to do with the literature. And I think that's where the missing link really is, because the referencing style of this institution will determine whether people they don't say you shouldn't copy somebody. What the system is saying is that if you copy somebody's work, you should be able to reference that person and acknowledge his originality, that this is not your work. Because in research, it's actually that you are agreeing with somebody or you are disagreeing with what somebody has said. And I think this is also very fundamental, because the emphasis which we pay to research in the university system today, I don't know if it has changed. You see, people start to do research method maybe close to your graduation. And it's just maybe 4 unit course you do in one semester. Then the next semester, you are expected to write a research work. That won't work. People need to be taken through the process of research. What does it mean to do a review of literature? People should be given that privilege to review literatures. And then somebody will be able to tell them, this is not how to review literature. This is what is missing in our academic space, because students really don't know what to do. So they cut here and paste. And of course, the students will become lecturers too now. So if you have not gone to University of Oxford or gone to Harvard, then of course it's what you know you will of course put into practice.
Cut and paste.
Yeah, so this is the real issue, and this is where for me really we really need to review and interrogate our curriculum, so that when we are teaching people, then we tell them how to go about research, whether it's in the social science or whether it's even in the hardcore science, and people will know what to do at every point.
I strongly feel having an online platform for lecturing, it's long overdue.
Yes.
With the experience we had when we had the outbreak of COVID, has taught us that lessons, and I think it's necessary to have this kind of digital learning platform. So I'm happy it's coming on board. All right, let's move on to the next story, which has to do with the Nigerian Communication Commission, NCC, the plan on the way to provide affordable and reliable broadband services accessible to all Nigerians. The emphasis is affordable and reliable broadband services. Should we be excited?
Well, until you tell us what the affordable means, the excitement may not be there.
You want to know exactly in naira and kobo. That's
so they should give us a figure. So we know what we have there.
Looking at the cost of
then we will be able to access it and then
access to internet.
Oh yeah, because internet is expensive. It's expensive, and it's not just here alone. They also need to, you see, these are issues for me, and I raised these issues very deeply on Monday at that meeting. You see, because we have a trust deficit in government, and I don't think that this is the era of government making too much of promises to people. We should tell people the way things are, so that when, of course, at the point of delivery, people will be able to assess you. This, for me, is important. It's not just to tell citizens, we are going to make life better for you. No. It's not as simple as that. Not as simple. And so people you raise their hope unnecessarily. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, they are expecting the manifestation of the promise made. And then, of course, you are not able to fulfill it. So I think that, yes, you have an intention. Let this thing blossom before we rush to the press with promises. The more of this we do, the more credibility the government loses. And the more the credibility government loses, the more, of course, you see that you are losing control of your citizens. And for me, what is important for this particular regime and government is to build trust. And how do you do this? Is by saying what you mean and meaning what you say.
All right. But that soundbite from Idauza, you say what you mean and you mean what you say. I guess we can wrap up this news analysis. What a way to wrap it up.
Yes.
Words of wisdom, quotable quotes. And I hope the social media team will tweet that.
I also hope that the NCC will take note of that.
Great, great. All right, we'll go on a short break now. When we return, our discussion for today will kick off. Just stay with us.
Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers, knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Suk Enlightenment.
Factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's still Early Exchange, and like I always say, Early Exchange will always get bigger and better, and that's why we'll be looking at effective communication in the workplace. As an employer or as an employee, what do you need to know when it comes to effective communication? What translates to effective communication? To shed more light on these and to fleshing up this discussion, we're being joined by Sam Horuiji, who is the Director of Research, Femi Watch Media Limited. Sam, glad to have you join us once again.
Good morning, Femi. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning, sir.
All right. We're looking at effective communication in the workplace. I would like you to talk to us, educate us on what makes it effective or get effective communication in the workplace. What should it look like and what makes it effective?
All right, thank you very much indeed, Femi. First, let's put communication into perspective. Everybody communicates, but not everybody communicates effectively. So there are certain elements in the communication interface that are very critical, whether internal communication, communication within the organization, and the external communication and what goes out in terms of communication from the company to the outside environment. So essentially, number one, critically, good communication boosts staff morale. So what you need to do, number one, is empathy. When you communicate, to what extent are you able to put your communication, taking cognizance of the view of the other person, so that when you raise issues, there's an empathy between the employer and the employee, the interface in terms of what you communicate. Number two, what is the tone of the communication, whether it's verbal, non-verbal. These are very critical. So you may say something and you mean a different thing. And these are the critical elements. Third one, which is very essential, is called active listening. Most times, people don't listen. They just assume that you are saying something which means different meanings. So active listening is one of the key components for effective communication. Maybe as we progress the discussion, then some other issues will be raised.
Okay, you've talked about some forms of communication, but how are this done? How should people communicate within a corporate environment? I recall that you made mention of the tone. So how do you communicate effectively in a corporate environment? Because people talk, people make communications, but like you said, sometimes it's not effective. How do you ensure that it's effective? Are there rules to it?
If I get you correctly, are you talking about the interface or the means or the types of communication that is expected in the workplace?
I'm talking about the means. How do you communicate among colleagues, within the environment? How do you ensure that the communication is effective?
Okay, the common one is the internal memorandum that is simply called a memo, which tend to communicate either top, down, down up on particular issues from different unit, department, divisions of the company to communicate an idea or a particular policy statement of the organization. So you use internal memorandum, but technology has equally changed that space, where you now have interface in terms of email, or you have an intra office communication where you use the internet as the basis of communicating with colleagues, top management down to middle management down to the shop floor. That's another process. Then you raise issues. You're able to escalate issues to top management from bottom up. Then top management down, they're able to feel the way that whatever they want to communicate, it gets to the staff appropriately. So you have in-house letters that you can use. You have notice board. These are all means of communication. But technology has changed that space tremendously. So technology is more driver in the way we communicate. Email interface has become more common in the workplace.
All right, I saw a report, which states the implication of ineffective workplace communication in the U.S. cost businesses $1.2 trillion annually. I know we don't have data or statistics to support that of Nigeria, but that of the U.S. is costing about $1.2 trillion annually when it comes to effective communication in the workplace. Talk to us. What could be the impact of ineffective communication in the workplace?
Once you are not able to communicate appropriately, it affects productivity, the morals of the staff that you work for. So it's a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from the point of view of communication. And communication is central to the bottom line as well. So the way you communicate is tangential and very critical in the way that you get productivity from the staff. So if you don't communicate effectively, and I use the concept of tone and the way you frame your communication, they may have positive or negative impact on the workforce.
Let me add this to it. How do you get communication? How do you get it right when you are having people from different backgrounds, people from different culture, they have different mindset, different beliefs, coming with different motives? How do you achieve effective communication in a group like that when you have this crop of people coming together in the workplace?
I think it starts from policy. You have what you call employee communication policy. Once that policy framework is put in place, people are guided appropriately on the way they communicate from bottom up, the way people communicate, top down, but essentially the tone of the communication is essentially the way top management communicates. So it's a prerogative of the top management to put a good communication policy in place which can enhance productivity and employee morale, and that internal communication interface will equally affect the way you communicate with the external. So if you don't have a proper training of the way you communicate your ideas about the business, then it will equally have negative impact in the way you send external letters to your client outside.
So what could be some of the challenges to effective communication within the workplace?
There's what you call channel noise in communication generally between the sender and the receiver. So the challenge is how do you clear those channel noise? And this has to do with ideas, knowledge, then the simple way in terms of verbal, which is very critical, then the non-verbal cue must be taken into cognizance as well. So when you're able to have a robust communication policy in place, this will help the company to communicate in the right direction.
Let's look at this issue of employer-employee kind of relationship. What kind of relationship should an employer, have with the employee, or the other way, vice versa? What kind of relationship should it be? Just strictly official, or semi-official, or hybrid? If something like that exists, you combine both. What kind of relationship?
No, I think that has to do with the way people relate within the office. You have what you call formal and informal communication. There must be a blend of relationship in terms of formal communication and informal communication. It's important that you must be friendly in the workplace. When you have a good rapport, it helps in the way you communicate as well, and it builds trust among employees. So in terms of sapiential relationship, that's people at the same level, okay, top, bottom, but again, you must equally set boundaries in the way you communicate so that people don't abuse that rapport that you create, so that people don't think that because you're friendly, then when you want to communicate officially, then you lower the standard. That is not the case. Somebody can be your friend, but once there's an infraction in terms of certain elements of communication in the place, you need to make those calls.
So when there are infractions or when there are conflicts, how do companies, or how should a corporate organization address communication breakdown?
There's a policy regime, particularly from the employee handbook, the way you communicate stated there, but then when there's a infraction, there's a grievance handling procedure in the workplace, then you need to exploit those grievances procedure so that you can exhaust any means. So if you are okay, then the management will let you go, but if there are infraction into the process, then some other things in terms of query is done, and that again is a means of communication as well when you have an infraction into the workplace behavior when you don't communicate in certain right manner.
What do you make of a development where you keep communicating to, let's say, a colleague or a team member? You keep communicating. I would like you to share your experience in this. Like, you keep communicating, but you're not getting results. So from your own hand, you've done your own deal by, passing the instruction or the directive. You've communicated, but the receiver hasn't gotten the message. What do you do in that instance?
I think there's a challenge in terms of directive management when you communicate from bottom up or even among colleagues. There's a new management philosophy that you call coaching, mentoring, and counseling, simply called employee counseling. These are the arena in which you're able to coach people in order that you can put some of your experience, some of your knowledge, experiential knowledge in place so that you're able to move the company in the right direction. So there are issues with communication, but then as a coaching manager or as a counseling manager or a mentoring manager, this become imperative that you need to coach your employee in a way that they understand communication or even other workplace rules and regulation. I think that to a very large extent will help.
Okay, let's look at communicating not just among colleagues or from employer to employee. What about customers? What are the best practices of effective communication to stakeholders within the workplace?
All right, I think in terms of communication generally, you need to have some element of emotional intelligence as well, which involve you trying to become very proactive in terms of how you know yourself as an individual or as an organization. Then you need to regulate yourself in terms of the negative impulses, in terms of the way you respond to the external customer, as the case may be, or client. Then two, you need to show some empathy, which I addressed earlier. Then you need high level of motivation, then interpersonal skills in terms of the way you communicate with the people. So social skills essentially are very uppermost in terms of the way you communicate with the customer. And there's this argument that everybody is a customer, so how do you want to be treated? Same way you communicate with your client or customer.
Okay, but talking about interpersonal skill, how does a person's personality impact their ability to communicate?
Yes, you have individual differences from the perspective of social psychology, but what is key is that these skills are trainable and transferable skills. So people may have some psychological differences, but then what is important is that to what extent do people you work with impact you positively by the kind of social skills they have, and they're able to translate that kind of rapport that we talk about, that type of empathy that we talked about, will enhance the way people relate among themselves. And therefore, you need some competence in social skill. And one of the social skills we just mentioned earlier was interpersonal skill. So you need to hone that interpersonal skill so that there's a good relationship between colleagues, and that we effectively assist them in the way they communicate, and they can communicate in a positive way.
I would like you to also educate us on the ideal ways or the professional proper ways to handle crisis, that arise when it comes to the issue of communication in the workplace. What are the ideal ways to handle that kind of crisis? Should you mediate? And if you're going to do mediation, how do you go about it? What kind of intervention is necessary in the workplace to handle crisis related to communication?
Conflict is inevitable, as they always say. People will always have conflict via communication. But what is key is that to what extent can you resolve those crises? And a little while ago, I talked about coaching, employee counseling. They become handy in terms of how you can resolve crisis, internal communication crisis in particular. But then, what is essential is you need to temper the way you communicate among yourself. You need to use civil language. You need to have mutual respect. These are key driver of effective communication in the workplace. So that is critical in terms of how you can resolve crisis communication, particularly internal communication conflicts in the workplace. Then the policy statement in terms of grievances handling. When there's an infraction into improper behavior, then those grievances will be able to resolve some of those issues.
Let's look at one type of communication sometimes that is very difficult to either handle or even deliver, and that's feedback. Now, feedback, how do you constructively give feedback? Whether feedback about an employee's performance or even a colleague's performance, and how do you handle feedback, maybe from a customer, or you have been the one who is receiving the feedback from your employer or from your colleagues? How do you handle and how do you deliver feedback?
I think for feedback mechanism in terms of internal communication in the first instance is mutual respect. So once there's the mutuality in terms of the way you relate with one another, that become easy to manage. But again, like I said, conflict is always inevitable. Sometimes when you communicate, people do not do active listening. So there's a misconception in terms of what you are communicating. So it's a responsibility of managers, as it were, to communicate in clear and a concise manner so that people understand what you're saying. On the other hand, if it's coming from the customer from outside, you have what you call irate customer, difficult customer, then you must be personable as a person in terms of the way you react to communication. You listen attentively, you acknowledge whatever challenge, whatever communication challenge. Once you're able to acknowledge, then you're able to deal with that issue more meaningfully without being reactive. So more often than not, you need to be proactive. And then again, the subject of emotional intelligence become very handy when you are dealing with the external client, particularly from the perspective of external communication.
How do we encourage people to do active listening? You observe that most of the time, even when people listen, they listen to look for lines to button into your communication or even talk. The issue of active listening is a challenge. How do we encourage and make it a culture here, not just the workplace, but as a people?
I think earlier I talked about what they call channel noise. That is inevitable. But what is important is to what extent do you even understand communication as a major challenge or a major interface between one person and the other. So the only way we can deal with that challenge is to hone the skill of active listening. And this is a trainable skills. There are parameters which you use to train people in terms of how they can pay attention and how they can distill a certain language based on the tone of the communication, the verbal, the written word. Once you're able to have that kind of deeper insight into the inner voice of that who is communicating with you, then that can be reduced minimally. So it's a transferable skill, it's a trainable skill. So active listening is a very essential element in terms of communication skill.
Now, I understand that a lot of organizations have their communication channel. How can an organization measure the effectiveness of their communication methods?
There are parameters in place. Those parameters in terms of how do you measure the communication interface. And we talked about various types of communication in terms of internal memo, in terms of newsletters, all kinds of communication interface. So you put basic parameter, benchmark, in terms of how you measure those things which are scientifically driven. So once you put, there are even Google Forms that can even help you to address those issues. So it depends on what you are measuring in terms of to what extent people are able to cascade message, to what extent are people able to escalate issues to management, and to what extent do we respect the kind of feedback mechanism that you mentioned earlier. This can be measured scientifically, and that will help to improve on the communication interface among employees, between management and employees, then improve on the interface with the external communication, as it were.
You know, when you have a group of persons, you're likely going to have powerful communicators and the weak ones, maybe due to their temperament or persona. How do you handle weak communicators, maybe in a team, and for you not to have crisis in a workplace?
It's essentially coaching and mentoring and counseling, employee counseling in terms of communication counseling. So you need to bring people to speed. And mind you, our roles as employer or managers is reform people. So your idea in the workplace is to bring people to speed through coaching in a way that they can experientially learn from your own effective communication skills that you have honed over the years. So you pass down one down. That will now improve, particularly for those who are weak in communication. So again, in-house training, you need to put people into the classroom from time to time, and you put them through communication skills to enhance the way they communicate in the workplace, and even the way they communicate with the outside.
So what benefit does effective communication bring to the organization?
Essentially, it's about high morale, and once there's effective communication, you can get the productivity that you demand from the employee. So it's a win-win situation.
All right, we'll take a breather now. When we return, we will dovetail into the second segment of our discussion. Stay with us.
In today's rapidly evolving work posture, cultivating a workplace that thrives on effective communication and embraces inclusivity is crucial for success. Effective communication serves as the lifeblood of any productive workplace. It involves the ability to listen attentively, articulate thoughts clearly, understand and respect diverse viewpoints. When communication flows openly and transparently, it fosters teamwork, reduces conflicts, enhances productivity, and nurtures trust among team members. Both employers and employees stand to benefit from honing their communication skills and utilizing a variety of communication channels to ensure a shared understanding of goals and expectations. Each company's value and mission statement is a major part that significantly shape the culture within every organization. This statement sets the ethical and behavioral expectations for employees, guiding them in decision-making and interactions. When these values resonate with employees and are consistently upheld, they form the foundation of a positive and inclusive work environment. Employees feel a sense of alignment with the company's vision, which in turn boosts motivation and commitment to achieving organizational goals. Enhancing ethnic diversity and promoting inclusion within the workplace is crucial for fostering a rich and vibrant organizational culture. When companies embrace individuals from various backgrounds and ethnicities, they unlock a wealth of perspectives, ideas, and experiences. This diversity sparks creativity, drives innovation, and enriches problem-solving capacities within the organization. Also, it creates a sense of belonging and encourages collaboration, leading to a more cohesive and successful work environment. Language is a fundamental aspect of any culture, and by recognizing and preserving indigenous languages, workplaces can show their commitment to valuing the unique identities and contributions of all employees. Hence, promoting and developing indigenous languages is an essential step towards honoring the cultural heritage and diversity present within a workplace. This initiative contributes to a more inclusive atmosphere, promoting unity and understanding among the workforce, and fostering a deeper appreciation for diverse cultures within an organization. Grace Komolafe, Souk News.
factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thank you, Grace Kumulafe, for that report on workspace dynamics. We've been talking about effective communication in the workplace. Now let's get into another aspect of the conversation with the company's values and mission statement, how it influences the company, the workplace culture. When you get into a corporate organization, a lot of times you will find at the reception a statement or a kind of sign that has the company's vision, also has the company's value and the mission statement. So that gives you an idea about the company's mission, what they intend to do. It gives you an idea into their values, the virtues that they try to uphold. And for a staff, at the onboarding process, it is assumed that every organization lets their employees into what they value, into the mission statement. It's beyond what you just see at the reception. They tell you this is our value, this is our mission, and so you need to abide by that. How does that now form the culture around that workplace is what we want to discuss. And Sam Oruje, he's still very much in the studio. He is Director, Research Policy and Development, Femi Wash Limited, the owners of Sook News and Wash Radio. All right, so let's look at workplace culture. We talked about values and mission statements, how it could form a culture. So how does it leave something you find on the wall or at the reception when you get into a corporate organization to a culture that people live by in the workspace?
Okay, thank you very much, Blessing. I think value shape culture, but there's a challenge in our climb where you are not able to align the corporate vision, mission, and the core values in terms of what you see and cross, particularly at the reception of the company. Do people really live those value propositions? I think that would be where we need to espouse this discussion further. To what extent do people align with the vision, mission, and the core values of those companies? To what extent do this one shape the culture of the organization? There's a big disconnect in terms of value proposition and the way people actually, the kind of culture that you see in some workplaces. There's a disconnect between the values and the culture that they exhibit, even internally and to the external. For example, people will talk about honesty as a core value of a particular organization, and that same company will be doing under the table transaction. Is a disconnect between the value proposition in terms of honesty. So if your value proposition is honesty, then issues of under the table transaction should not occur. And you know what I mean by under the table transaction. That means corruption. You say your value is honesty. So you should espouse everything that is honesty. You talk about respect. Do you respect people? Do you respect your customer? So these are the core issues that we need to expound as we progress the conversation.
I would like you to talk to us about some of the factors that determine the core values of a company or organization. Is it you see some people, they just do copy and paste from somewhere? What should determine if a company needs to come up with these core values, the corporate culture? What should determine, what should influence this?
More often than not, I think the vision, missions, they come from the visionary. That's a business owner or the founder of a business. So he has certain critical milestones of how he sees his or her business, and these are his vision. Then the core values are crafted from that vision. So, but then those values are supposed to form the culture of the organization. And like I mentioned earlier, more often than not, if I use your word, is cut and paste to some people. So that value supposed to be a critical arena where everything you talk about in your core value reflects in the culture of the staff. If you're talking about honesty, staff must be honest. If you're talking about mutual respect, respect must be there. Whatever value proposition that you espouse in the marketplace, so to speak, then you must live. That culture must drive that kind. If you say professionalism, to what extent are you professional in what you do? So if you say customer service, customer delight, to what extent do you put those values? Does the employees espouse those values when they interact with the customer? I think these are the critical issues. So, but the culture, in terms of organizations that are driven by excellence, those cultures are like a DNA of that organization. You can see that in the staff. So you walk into a reception of a company. You can always determine the culture, even from the front office, the way you are attended to, even the communication of the front desk person will show whether those core values that are dotted around the workplace really represent the culture of the organization.
Okay. You just talked about you visiting a reception or getting to a reception, and you're checking the conduct of the front desk person, and you're trying to place that or juxtapose that with the company's value, the company's mission statement, if they actually do align. Why is it that sometimes the behavior of the employees or what you find from an organization does not reflect the value or the mission statement of the organization? Is it because sometimes it's not concise and clear enough, or there are no laid down structures to enable it become a reality? Let's take, for instance, Google's mission. Now, I'm not supposed to mention the name, but I just want it to be clear for all of us to see this example. Now, Google's mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Now, Google's value includes focus on the user, and it says all else will follow. If you even go by the mission statement to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, that you could find from the service that they deliver. Take it now to other organizations. You find sometimes very lengthy, fully worded mission statement. But when it comes to what they deliver, you just cannot wrap it around and say, yes, you actually deliver on your mission statement. You come to the core values. You don't find the staff exemplify what the company says they believe in. Again, is it that it's not concise and clear enough, or the structure to enable it to become reality and not also set in place to bring the print into reality?
Yeah, I think there's a challenge when you deal with the issues of culture in terms of core value. Number one, is the top management that drives a sustainable culture in the workplace. So once those cultures are lowered from top management, then it reflects directly into the lower listing. But what is key, you need the structure and you need the enablers in terms of the company policy. When you don't lower your standard in terms of your core values, you must live your core values. Once you are not able to live your core value, then there's a disconnect between your proposition and the way you actually live those things. So it builds on the companies to live their value, and they must put a structure in place to live those values. So how do you drive and sustain those values? I think that's a critical question here. Number one is to see that you drive excellence as a basis of the way you deal with issues in the organization. So if your values are honesty, once somebody has an infraction into that, then it goes through the grievance process, and once it's established that there's an infraction, then you let the person go. So every other person will shape up. So in terms of practice, you need people who are holder in the office, what you might call champion in the office, that live these practices that you have already put in place as value. But then the challenge is, number one, how are people recruited? They go through the process. What are the strategy documents in terms of behavior? What are in the employee handbook? Are people unbonded effectively in line? Are people trained on the culture of the organization? Do they understand the vision and the mission? So once you have that kind of clarity, then you'll be able to marry, you'll be able to align those values with the culture in the workplace. But essentially, it's a major problem in our environment where there's a faulty recruitment, where there are issues between owners, business owners, management. You have a recalcitrant employee to a large extent who don't want to shape up in terms of the value. But what is important is that once you put those values in place, you must live those values, you must act those values, and then when people don't fall in line, you need to do the needful.
For those who are still having this confusion about the difference between vision and mission and the relationship between both, I would like you to educate them on what vision should look like, and then the differences, and then the interaction between having a vision and then mission statement.
Okay, vision is just the way somebody has seen the way he wants to run a business or an enterprise. So it's not only in business, even non-business entity, non-governmental organization equally have their vision. I think mission simply is how we want to sustain that vision, how you want to get to where you promise to be. So if you want to be one of the top 10 service provider, how will you get to be 10 of those top providers? And the core value are what exemplify the company in terms of how they will live their vision and mission to get to where they want to be.
So how can companies use their values and mission statements to attract and even retain clients?
No, once you practice what you say, if, for example, you're dealing with a customer and their issues in terms of customer feedback, their issues, you're able to do damage control appropriately in line with your value proposition, and you're able to sustain them over a period of time, then you continually remain in the business place.
Okay, let me ask, will there be a situation that will arise for you to review the mission statement? Is it still possible? Or let's even assume you might not need to review your vision because that's the picture of where you want your company to be. But are there instances that will give room for you to review your mission statement?
Yeah, there's no document that is cast in stone when it talks about corporate vision, corporate mission, corporate core values. They are strategic documents, and every document can be reviewed based on current reality. And you can even go into another business line and you need to rework even your vision to accommodate the new reality. So it's possible that you can review that in line with your current reality. So from time to time, so you can do what they call rebranding to reposition the business in the marketplace. So you have opportunity to rebrand. So it's not cast in stone.
How do you ensure that an employee or employees take a mission statement, they create this sense of belonging? They don't see that as something that belongs to the managers or the owners of the company, but they see, to be part of their corporate responsibility to work with the mission statement. How do you ensure that they imbibe, the culture of what the mission statement is all about?
First, during the onboarding process, that must be properly put in perspective when people are coming into the company. Two, there must be a deliberate effort on part of management to constantly remind people of the core values of the business. So you need to do training, retraining. So like the concept, people need to unlearn and relearn some of those things constantly to be in line with the company's vision.
Are there certain values and mission statements of an organization that can boost the morale of its employees and even bring about engagement? Now, what would they look like, or what should they center on, the kind of value of an organization that will even boost the morale of the employee? Values and mission statement, because sometimes it's about the business, so the employee just have to key in because they work there. But are there some that could actually have that effect on
employee engagement essentially is driven by open communication. Once the management operates an open communication, that will enhance employee engagement, and those value in terms of what the organization has put in place must be sustained. Management must live those values, employees must live those values. To that extent, it will help to improve on employee engagement and constant communication interface in terms of communicating the organization value, the mission from time to time, and stay focused on the strategic mission of the company, and that focus will provide that and sustain employee engagement over time.
How should you handle employees who do not, who are in variance with the vision or mission of the company? They seem to find themselves in a strange environment. Their lifestyle, their beliefs do not resonate with the vision and mission statement of the company or the organization. How do you handle people that, you even have people like that, they've been in that company for years, but they seem not to be in alliance with the vision or mission of such organizations? How do you handle that?
Well, I think the grievances handling procedure, employee grievances handling policy or procedure, we take care of that. And again, this is the responsibility of top management. Once people don't even live the values of the organization, I think in the final analysis, is a business, even in charity. There's no charity in terms of how you engage the employee. So once employee can't really live the values, then it's the responsibility of management to do the needful.
So how can organizations use their values and mission statement to address social and even environmental challenges?
All right, in terms of corporate social responsibility, it may not be encrusted in terms of the vision, mission, or core value, but as a corporate responsible citizen, companies from time to time give back to society, what the American call corporate philanthropy. So it's in line to have a good reputation in the marketplace, but then even corporate social responsibility has taken a new dimension. Even when you make profit, are you responsible with your profit? What are the core issues with the environment? These are the ongoing conversations. So it's imperative that organizations in line with their culture must find a way to envision and enlarge corporate philanthropy, corporate citizenship in a way that they give back to society so that their reputation in the marketplace become more sustainable. And then it must be in line with the current reality in terms of what you give. Are you just giving for giving's sake? What are the impacts? To what extent do they impact on the host community and the citizens at large?
Talk to us about some of the internal mechanism an organization should put in place for employees to understand properly, and effectively the mission statement, the vision, and then to ensure that they are also being implemented.
Onboarding, number one. Number two, training and retraining. Then employee engagement. Then open communication. Companies should be able to communicate their ideas, their initiatives, their policies from time to time, so that this will help in a way to drive that vision.
All right, we talked about effective communication before we began the discussion on companies' values and mission statement. Now, I've heard about some organizations and even seen some organizations that it is not just about those who are in the office who are aware of the company's value and mission statement. Everyone seems to be on board and in agreement with the company's mission and value. They can actually tell you what the company believes in. What kind of communication would ensure that happens or will make that happen?
Simply open communication, open communication. And that's essentially what it is that can drive those processes from time to time. Once your communications are open, then employees become more engaged. Then once employees are engaged, it will impact. Once the internal customer are well served, then it will impact positively on the external customer. So, like I said earlier, it's a win-win situation once an open communication in place. You don't have ambiguity in how you communicate in the workplace.
For mission statement, how can an organization measure the level of success or failure?
Well, you have people who are into branding, who do what you call brand measurement. They are in the best place to do those kind of evaluation. But then if it's a well-structured environment where you have a full-fledged marketing and sales department, you might have a department who is able to address that, measure. So the indicators of what you measure is determined by top management. So once employee communications are open, these issues can be addressed more meaningfully.
No, for businesses, there's what is called feasibility study. For any business that you want to engage in, you conduct a feasibility study. Do you think that such is also required for mission statements? So it doesn't seem like a company is taking on a shoe that is too big for them. You're carving out mission statement that's given your internal operations, your business strategy. It's going to be very difficult for you to leave it.
No, I think in this regard, a feasibility study is just one element, but I think you're speaking to, in my view, a business plan. So if you have a business plan for people to be interested, or even for investors to be, every business strategy document in terms of your vision, mission, core values are equally put into that business plan, because that again will help would-be investors, even banks, to look at how the business is crafted, the kind of business philosophy, and that will guide in terms of the relationship they want to do with that company. So a feasibility study, yes, good, but then a business plan will enunciate this vision, mission, and core value, even the target market they want to serve, and how they want to do the business over a period of time. Then the strategic focus of the company and the strategic program, most likely minimum of 3 to 5 years, is put in place so that people can assess the company more meaningfully in terms of the kind of relationship they want to have with the company.
Recently, I had an interaction with an employer who talked about the challenge of having people who have spent years in the company and then you're bringing them on board. You seem to have this, if I may use the word, carryover of the core value of the previous company to the new ones. And then there's also this tussle between what they are used to and what should be the new core value they should comply with. For that kind of employer, what's your advice to them? I think,
simply put, like we mentioned earlier, the onboarding process is very critical, where you can win people of the mindset that they are bringing from their previous employment to the new employment. So, and the onboarding process, you need to do what you call mind shift in a way that you're able to redirect the employee's mind into the new environment, and they begin to shape into that new environment. So that culture is something that can be transferred through a deliberate and rigorous employee engagement training, retraining, so that you're able to win them, just like the way you win a baby from breast milk. into semi-solid to actual solid. So that kind of metaphor speaks to the way you can find a way to take those garbage, if I may use that word advisedly, of new employee into a new environment where culture and performance and excellence is the main determinant of that workplace.
After onboarding process and this belief that, oh, they know now what the company value and mission statements are, what are some of the challenges that an organization can be faced with that hinders the implementation of the values and even mission statement?
Sometimes if you want to do what they call mind shift, it takes some time. So it behoves on management sometimes that people have imbibed certain culture. So you need to find a way to redirect them to the new culture through deliberate training, through deliberate experiential behavior from the current employees, so that people can pick new values, new culture in a way that they can forego the previous behavior. But from the perspective of social psychology, it's always very difficult to do what we call mind modification. But then essentially role modeling is key in terms of how you can bring change to people's behavior in the workplace.
All right, with your submission on that note, we have to wrap up this discussion, and we want to thank you, Sam Oruje, for spending time with us and for sharing your thoughts on Early Extinct this morning.
My pleasure, Femi. Thank you.
All right, let's go on another short break. When we return, we're going to have another discussion with another guest. Who that will be, you'll find out after this break.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souk News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souk News.
Shout out to Souk News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souk News. Here's the Souk News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souk News. Thank you very much.
factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange, and now we want to switch gear to talking about ethnic, diversion and inclusion. What does that suggest to you? We have different ethnicities in Nigeria and all across the world. What should be the impact of that? What should be the disadvantage or the advantage of that? Should that be a blessing? Should that be otherwise? To shed more light on this, we are being joined by Idauza Osamaze, who is the Vice President, Femi Wash Media Limited. Glad to have you join us, Idauza.
Femi, my pleasure to be back.
Great. All right, let's start with these. Talk to us. What should be the impact of ethnic diversion and inclusion? Should it be, like I said from my intro, should it be a blessing or otherwise?
Well, it can be a blessing, it can also be a curse, and that is absolutely dependent on how people are able to manage diversity. Really, when we look at creation, for example, we see a whole lot that what really make it worthwhile or beautiful is diversity. But somehow we find that in terms of managing this diversity, a whole lot of things can actually go wrong. And this is when some people feel insecure in the midst of people who are of different ethnic extraction. These are issues, of course, that you have to deal with in workplace, and that's where leadership really is required. When you have the appropriate leadership, of course, they could be really a blessing.
So what are some of the issues that can come up from having a diverse ethnic workplace?
Well, you see, people tend to always aggravate around people they are secure with. And the whole real issue is security. So if I'm from a certain ethnic tribe and I find my people, the chances are that I am going to feel more secure about this person than somebody who is from a different tribe. And now, if this becomes a trend or a tradition or a culture in an organization, you will see people start to add in silos or groups that will be working at cross purposes against the organizational goal. That's why I say, because a whole lot of people come to workplace with so many stereotypes, some biases that are really lying in the subconscious or the unconscious of every individual, and these are based on the stories that you have heard from people of other people, and so you have prepared your mind coming to workplaces that there are some people that have been stereotyped in a certain way, and you are thinking they are going to act in that particular fashion. So when people have these biases and this stereotyping in their DNA, it is difficult really for them to work with people from other tribes. So this is the real issue. But once people become real universal and they have disabused their mind of any biases, understanding that every ethnic group has its good, has its bad, and has its ugly. And then, of course, you can be much more open and broad in terms of dealing with people.
All right, let's look at Nigeria as a country. Nigeria has a population of over 200 million and ethnicity more than 300. How do we take advantage of our diversity to ensure that it's being tailored towards growth and development? And what are the challenges, when it comes to having inclusion as far as Nigeria is concerned? What are the cropping issues?
Well, speaking to ethnic politics and management, a whole lot has been written in that regard, especially by many political scientists on managing our diversity, and because it has been very crucial to where we find ourselves as of today, really. Yeah, but one of the most outstanding author in that regard is Professor Kudeba Onoli, who wrote a book on ethnic politics in Nigeria. And one of the issues that was raised in that thesis was the fact that over the period of our negotiation for independence, that you have a lot of people who, of course, will be clouded by ethnicity and really were not looking at the issue that was on the table. And what was that issue? That we're all collectively, whether from the north or the south, every one of us were slaves to the colonial masters, and that was what was important for us to actually rally around and bury our secondary contradictions in such a way that we can overcome colonial rule and then become one body. But unfortunately, in the process of working toward that goal, we find ourselves having a recourse to our ethnic background. And of course, that has actually been the bane of the Nigerian Federation. So when Claude Ake was writing, of blessed memory, said, Nigeria really had not been able to put development on its front burner. Now, what has been on the front burner is our politics. Of course, because like they say, politics is who gets what, when, and how. Now, if the man who is at the center, who determines who gets what, when, and how, factor in these sentiments into the way resources are shown, chances are that you are going to have people mistrust leadership. And this is what we have seen in the last 60 years of our independence. Now, for example, I was sharing with some people an exercise we call the piece of cake, where we ask, okay, take about 11 a 4-straight line, cut through a piece of cake and ensure that 11 people get a share. And every time people try that exercise, they always arrive at 8 pieces. And I ask, what's left for the other 3 people? People get stuck. And this is where really the challenge is. When you are sharing resources, and of course you are not accommodating everybody, suspicion will be there. Yesterday I was speaking to somebody and I said, one of the issues, for example, you're talking about, when you hear people are talking about padding of our budgets in the legislature, one of the things that come to mind, and people, because when you use the word padding, it's negative connotations. People see it as, oh, these people are trying to load the budget so that they can cheat. But that's really not the issue. Now, listening to lawmakers speak, and most of the time they say, I come from a local government. 10 years, my local government doesn't feature on the federal budget. And yet I'm representing them. Because as a legislator, I have 3 basic roles. The first role is representation. So if I'm representing my people in a government, and for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, the name of my local government does not feature in the allocation of resources, how do I tell them I'm representing them? So this is a challenge. And this is because we are not strategic in the way we apply resources, such that we are able to program it to say in 8 years or in 12 years, all the 12 or the 774 local government, for example, in Nigeria, will be covered by something. And this is where the real challenge lies. Now, when you see other examples where ethnic nationality has been managed, especially in Singapore, with 3 major ethnic groups, what Lee Kuan Yew did, though he was a Chinese, he associated more with the Malays. He even had to send his children to Malay school to go and learn the Malay language. And that reduces the mistrust in the system. So when you, as a leader in an organization, and you sit around people, and then of course you're speaking your language, where other languages or people who don't even understand the language are there, you make them feel insecure. What this means is that we are not wanted here. And so if I'm not wanted, why will I need to volunteer or contribute my quota to the success of this business? This is issues, and this is why I speak to it, that leadership is critical in terms of managing diversity.
So what are some of the strategic ways that an organization can combat bias and stereotypes and some practices that may make other ethnic groups feel insecure within the workplace?
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. That's why I said everything, like they say, rises and falls on leadership. And once leaders are able to emphasize that I really don't care where you come from, what is important to us is our goal or the core purpose why we are here. And once the why is defined according to Simon Sinek, which is the just cause for which an organization is set up, then of course that becomes the driving force. So it really don't matter who run the business. All that we are interested in is how to get the problem solved. So the person who can do or solve the problem becomes really the brother or sisters. I think that is very clear in scripture. When people came and said to Jesus, and they asked him, and he said, Master, your mother and your father, they've been looking for you past 3 days. And he said, who are my father? Who are my mother? So the one that are sitting down listening to me, they are my father, they are my mother. And I think that is the kind of leadership that you require in workplace, that is not looking at color, is not looking at race or language, or looking at, of course, people's status. All that he looks at is who can actually deliver results. And of course, where excellence is rewarded, then of course you will be able to overcome these pedestrian or trivialities.
But that may be very easy to accomplish in a private sector. But in the public service and in some other areas, particularly in Nigeria, you find a situation where the person who rises to the head of leadership in that particular organization or parastatal must come from the dominant ethnic group in that area. And these practices keep on going. It now seems like the normal thing to do. How can such be corrected?
Well, I think, for example, yes, you said in the private sector it's important because what drives is the motive is profit. So if I am concerned about getting profit, all that I would be interested in is who can contribute to make that profit possible. Now, but in the public sector, in short, I was speaking on Monday again, I keep referring to this meeting with these legislators, and one of the issues I raised with them, and I said, look, this government must run like a business. We must put sentiments aside. What confronts us, for example, is the fact that we're looking at a nation, and when we take the statistics, for example, as we are looking at it today, it's gray. It's not painting, it's gloomy in outlook. That we're looking at in 5 years' time, Nigeria will be about 260 million, being among the first 8 most populous nations in the world. And by 2050, we are getting up to over 400 million people if we move at the same rate. Now, what is facing us is not whether we are from the north or from the east. The problem that confronts us today, issues that dollar is selling at 1,048, it does not have any ethnic sympathy. There's no food in the nation, there's no ethnic sympathy. And this is the issues that we have found, that where human beings are not strong enough to manage issues. Take, for example, in the management of our diversity, we have come up with what they call the federal character system, the quota system. And what is this supposed to do? It's supposed to see how do we really ensure that there is inclusion in terms of taking or assessing what belongs to the Commonwealth, such that no state is left out, such that no geopolitical entity is left out. But in the last years, we have misapplied the quota system. Quota is not synonymous with mediocrity. What it presupposes is that it should actually give room for people of different ethnic nationality and diversity to come together and be in the same workplace and environment. And that, of course, will increase the bondedness of this ethnic nationality. But what do you see today, for example? Even in terms of filling position in the unity schools, for example, you see somebody, they say, oh, he's from educationally disadvantaged state. Now, if I am from educationally advantaged state like Lagos and I have a score of 160 over 200, I am denied admission. And then another child who is coming from Adamawa scored 28 and is given admission in the name of quota. What you do is you create distrust. And this is why people don't feel belong to the entity called Nigeria. And this is also the real reason why people are not patriotic to the cause of the nation because they are feeling shortchanged. Now, I've argued this severally. Those who so-called educationally disadvantaged stage, what make it educationally disadvantaged? Is it that the teachers are not qualified? Do they need to recruit teachers who, for example, should prepare the children so that they can read that baseline? This is what we need to do. Now, if the teachers are not enough, then reduce the number of schools so that they can have good qualified teachers to prepare the children so that they can be competitive. We are even living in a world now that are without borders. That competition is not just within your nationality. Competition now is global because your nation can no longer provide everything that you need. So you have to compete with people from China, people from Indonesia. Now, how do you use those low grade to compete? This is the challenge that all of us must embrace as leaders. That look, yes, while we are working toward inclusion, which of course is also very, very critical in terms of the sustainability debate, especially the people part of the sustainable agenda, that people, even people with disabilities, of course, we must find a way to include them within the system. And that requires a lot on the companies or establishment to put in place. Take, for example, the walkways. When you're doing your building, you put into account that it's not only just people with 2 legs that can climb here. There are also people who can walk, and you must make that space for them to climb. Now, you are building your toilet, you must make allowances for this sets of people. Now, all these ideas about inclusion, especially in the sustainability debate, is to see that everybody feel equal in the workplace. And this is what the challenge is, and this is what is before us as a people. That is really not about where we come from. I argue somewhere, somebody said to me, oh, it's our turn to produce president. And I said, South produced a president for 6 years. I really didn't have any single benefit. No road to my village, no lights, no industry. So what benefit is it to me that somebody from South is a president, or somebody from Southwest is president? Tinubu is president today from Southwest. I'm not sure that every Southwest that's actually benefited. It's actually an individual. And I think we must get to that point in our own understanding and conversation, that the fact that somebody comes from your ethnic group becoming a president really does not translate into good life for you. What is important is that we find somebody who is broad-hearted and who is driven by passion for the good of the majority of the people. And I think this is what should really form the basis for the consideration of who we choose to lead us as a people.
You're almost answering my question, because I actually want us to look at the political terrain. You have this practice in this climb when it comes to politicking. People bring the ethnic sentiment, the prejudice, they spice it up when it comes to politicking. Why do you think it's so? And then how can we change the narrative to ensure that we begin to take advantage of our diversity and ensure there's proper inclusion?
You see, it's just that sometimes people don't study trend. And this is really why, for me, somehow you look at some certain things, you be wondering why people will reach some certain conclusion. As long as power had remained in the north, the economic base come to the south. It's almost natural. Because while you are struggling to prove that you are not biased, you will be conceding ground to the other side that does not produce leadership. That's happened from time to time. Because every little intention that you make, somebody is going to interpret it. And so you will be doing and working hard, because it's just a given. Because you know naturally in the political circle, your people are going to vote for you. So you take that for granted. So where do you need to do more work? You need to do more work where you feel people are suspicious. And in order to do more work there, you will be pacifying them. It's just natural. You will be pacifying them. So if me were left alone, I would have just liked to remain in opposition so that they continue to pacify me. When you do something, I will just read it, meaning and motives to it, and say, oh, we're trying, because you need to come and win my place, for example. But unfortunately, we don't think this way. And this is because the politicians have read our psychology, and they know that we are not deep in terms of critical analysis. And therefore, they play on our emotions and they play on our sentiment. And I think, again, like I always say, the bedrock of any nation is a good educational system where people are trained to think critically and be able to weigh alternatives and see which benefit them the most. Because, like I said, we don't take ethnicity to the market. We don't take it to the supermarket, and of course it's not a ticket to jackpot even. So what's important for us is good life, and where it comes from really shouldn't really be a problem for us.
As much as an organization wants to ensure ethnic diversity and inclusion in the workplace, what are the metrics by which it can measure its success in that aspect?
Well, of course, the world is setting certain metrics today. Take, for example, talking inclusion, for example, people are saying, of course, there's a certain percentage of women you want to have in the place you work. Some people are also having to say, okay, disabled are to be included. Young people also must be included. All these things are being set by the global bodies to ensure that we carry a lot of people along. So these are the real things that we talk. But then, of course, in the workplace, you must also put into consideration, and this is where, of course, I speak about stereotypes and some biases. And people are looking, take for example, the balance between male and female, that you are finding that there are some certain things that you think women will not be able to achieve, and it will be easier for men to do it, maybe because of what is required, the energy or the strength that's required to do that job, the stamina to be able to stay on, depending on what nature of a job is. So people pull all these things into consideration, because at the end of the day, is the output that is actually determining what kind of persons that you want to recruit. So it's not just that you are recruiting people for recruiting sake, just to make sure that you set a balance, and at the end of the day, you are really not meeting the target or the output that you have set out to meet ab initio. So for me, really, the metric should just be qualification. That if this person is right to do the job, and if he has proven in the time past that he has been able to accomplish something that's similar, or that he has the potential to be able to do the job, there should be no discrimination on the basis of whether gender, whether race, or even social class.
Let's talk about some of the mechanism an employer needs to put in place to ensure, ethnicity, taking advantage of the diversity and inclusion in the workplace, whereby you're promoting unity. What kind of mechanism will be put in place to ensure that you encourage people to shy away from ethnicity, biases, and all form of prejudice?
Yeah, like I said, I've really alluded to that, and I have told you what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore to be able to douse the tension of mistrust within society. And I think that's what every leader needs to learn. That people want to gravitate to places where they feel secured. They are not threatened because of where they come from or the color of their skin. And so in the workplace, you find that a lot of people really take jobs not because of the salary most of the time. Yes, it's important, the salary, but the sense of security and trust that they feel within the system is also very important. And this is why you see some people can remain in a job even though they have a better offer somewhere, but they see that, look, the kind of community I found around myself here is just conducive. Because you also have seen people who have left a place and then they went for a better offer and then start to regret, because what you find in that space really is not, you are not finding fulfillment in what you do because of the way the place is organized. And this is why a lot of people say in terms of branding, that no matter what strategy you put in place, culture will eat up strategy as a breakfast any day, any time. So if you have a strong culture, people culture, where you treat everybody equally, and you are dispassionate in terms of relating with people, and you are not selective in terms of applications of rules, people know that if you merit punishment, you are punished. If you merit reward, you are rewarded, irrespective of your closeness to the CEO, for example. Then, of course, you can actually forge some sense of unity.
Now, in forging the sense of unity, leadership has done its own by ensuring that those who are qualified get the roles or get the position. But how do you see affinity groups that focus on particular ethnic groups? You find that happening in schools, tertiary institutions, for instance, where you have different ethnic groups, and they also have like a culture week where the different ethnic groups showcase their culture. But in the workplace environment, things like that may begin to happen amongst employees who find that they are from the same ethnic group, and then they begin to form an alliance, making other employees uncomfortable. In a situation like that, because it is seen in this part of the world that you can't stop people from speaking their language. You can't stop people from identifying with someone from their ethnic group. How can the leadership step in to ensure it doesn't become a kind of toxic culture that makes other persons uncomfortable?
Well, in the school, that's understandable. Sometimes you just also want to showcase the beauty of color and see how diversity really adds beauty to what we do. That's understandable. But for me, work is work. When you come to work, I don't think you come to work to come and do socials. If you can do that during break. When people are in the office, they should do the office work. Except that there's a work that is bringing people together. I don't see why people should really be gravitating around cultural issues in the office. It doesn't make anything good. People should come to work, and when you are coming to work, like in other climes, people make you come to work, and what you're doing, you're on your table and you are doing your work. It really doesn't matter. Like somebody said, you can get anything done as long as you don't really care who takes the blame or who takes the praise. So, you go to the UAE, for example, where you have about 10 million people in total, and the locals, they are just about 1.5 million. Now, this for me is a challenge to the conversation which we foster here. What they call today, we call it in this part, local content. That if I set up an organization, I must have a certain degree of locals who will work with me. Now, for me, this is a kind of an inhibitor to progress. Because what that means, it puts you in a tight corner where you have to look for people because you must include them in your business, and therefore, these persons have to be taken, whether they are qualified or not. Now, before in the UAE, they say, oh, you must have an indigene who is part and parcel of that business. Today, they have removed that law. Because they know that the indigenes may not be qualified. So if you have somebody who is qualified, yeah, but what have they done in place of that is that they made a room that if you're registering a company, you have a sponsor who is an indigene. And you're allowed to recruit whoever works with you, as long as they are productive and they are generating results. Now, what you see is that from the 1977, the nationalization policy of Obasanjo then, up to today, you see, as a nation, we pay blind eye to fundamental issues. We started to go down from the nationalization policy. Because by the time you remove the experts and you ask the locals to do the work, they couldn't do it. And it is that tragedy of fall that we are in till today. Go and check it, and history will show you how we have been nosediving from that policy. Just because that somebody feel, oh, as a military man, you needed to fight colonial master because they took some actions, and you need to fight back, and you take all the companies and say you want to run it yourself. But you don't have the capacity to run it. That's why all our critical national assets, they are all dead as we speak. So for me, really, I think what should be emphasized, whether it's in a workplace or at the nation center, should be excellence, competence. So when people base recruitment parameters on excellence, intelligence, whether it is IQ, whether it's emotional intelligence, whether it's social intelligence, whether it is adversity intelligence, just base it on intelligences and competencies. That somebody is going to do this work, he can do it. And if there is somebody who can do it better, we should not substitute mediocrity for meritocracy. But you see, what has been our bane is that we have sacrificed meritocracy on the altar of mediocrity in the name of ethnic nationalities.
All right, as we wrap up, let's look at the issue of marginalization, where people feel marginalized, some minority group, you know, even the major ones, they feel like that. And this is why, or what is fueling the call for restructuring in recent times, where they feel their interests are not being protected. How do we handle this as a nation? And then what could be the way forward?
Well, I think marginalization has become a mantra of a sort in our country, where you see people are crying that they are marginalized. Now, when you look at the way we deal with marginalization, sometimes again, it's ludicrous. Take, for example, in the assignment of portfolio ministries, I hear people talk about Jewisy ministries. Why should a ministry be Jewisy? For example, that all the Jewisy ministry is given to one ethnic group. Why is a ministry Jewisy in the first place? Because these are all incentive for corruption. And this is the real problem. That what people call marginalization is that they don't have opportunity to steal. This is the real issue. Yeah, but you see, because when you look at all the conversation we are having, and people are saying, oh, I would have had a better opportunity to steal here than where you are putting me here, because money does not come here. That's the conversation we are having. And this is the real thing, creating the fertile ground for corruption. Otherwise, every ministry is the same. What are you supposed to do is to excel or bloom where you are positioned. This has been the real issue. So there's nothing like marginalization, if you say. Now, because even in the family, there are marginalization. As a father, I have sons, and I want to give an assignment. I should also think we should do it better. It doesn't matter how the other person will feel. Now, if I know that my younger son will do it better than the first one, and I go and give it to the one who will not do it well, and then he wastes it, what value will that add to me? This is the real issue, that we need to train ourselves up, and we need to think, critically about issues and weigh the options. What are the benefits that is coming? That should be the driving force. What's the goal? Now, who really cares? Who rules? If there's food in abundance, if people know that when they compete for a position, that nobody is going to give them preference because they have one big brother who is somewhere, then everybody will sit tight, everybody will work hard. Now, but because there's so much attraction at the center, there's so much to steal from the center. This is why the cry of marginalization is hitting the roofs.
All right, thank you very much, Idausa Osamanze, for talking to us about ethnic diversity and inclusion, not just in the workplace, it's also extended it to ethnic diversity and inclusion in Nigeria in the public service. Thank you very much for your time with us today.
My pleasure to be here.
Let's go to a quick break and look at another aspect of the workplace culture. Stay tuned.
This afternoon, I would like to talk about a touchy subject and an experience that I had. And that touchy subject is really about the etiquette of the lady's handbag. I went for a function at a friend's house, and there were quite a lot of people. And as I arrived, most of the chairs were taken. I spotted a chair that I made a beeline to. And as I got there, there was a lady sitting beside that particular empty chair, and there was a handbag on the chair. And I politely asked if there was anybody sitting on the chair. Was it reserved? She first eyed me from top to bottom, and she said no. So I was expecting, naturally, that she will then lift her bag so I could sit down. When she did not, I politely asked, please, may I sit on it? Very reluctantly took the bag and continuously stood up to just make things uncomfortable for me, passing drink over my head. And I got the message, and so I stood up and left the table at the particular chair. I would say this is the general, but this is not uncommon. I think it's wise not to put your bag on the ground if it's that expensive. But I also believe that it's not fair that you have a seat and reserve one seat for your bag whilst other people are standing. What exactly should be the etiquette around the ladies' handbags? Any contribution will help.
Factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thanks for staying with. Thank you for being with us on Early Exchange all the way from 7 a.m. to this time. Now let's take a look at the development of indigenous languages and also its promotion. Now, looking at Nigeria, we understand that there's several languages in Nigeria. How can indigenous languages be developed and promoted, used for communication in the workplace, outside of the workplace? We have Bayo Olauye, who's a broadcast journalist and also our in-house analyst, joining us to talk about this morning. Good morning, sir.
It's a pleasure.
I just talked about Nigeria being a country with several languages. There's hardly any ethnic group that doesn't have more than one language that is also spoken in that ethnic group. So how can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this, for instance?
Thank you very much. The issue of languages has been the concern of so many people. Just 2 days ago, my wife was complaining about my grandchildren not speaking Yoruba. And I was telling her, why don't you leave these children? But eventually I came to realize that really you have to encourage them to speak local languages. Our social political groups too have complained about this, about the attitude of parents and teachers to push our local languages to the background. For instance, the Ohanese has said something about this. Afenifere too has said something about this. And the Governors Forum at the time said local languages should be encouraged. The Arewa Consultative Council at the time also talked about the non-availability of teachers to teach these languages, the non-availability of textbooks, and the non-availability of teaching materials to teach these languages. So I think we should encourage the tertiary institutions to produce teachers in these languages, and from there we can move on.
I still want you to talk to us more about some of the things, that have gone wrong over the years. Why do you think you have this preference for foreign languages or English to the expense of our local languages? What has been responsible for this?
I think it's parents mostly, the attitude of parents. They want to send their children to elite schools, and just like they say, my Volkswagen is better than yours. Everybody wants to send their children to the best schools, and as a result, they want their spoken English to be top-notch. Well, they're entitled to their opinion. But what I feel is that we should go back to the schools. We should now employ teachers who are very versed in the languages. We should be prepared to go the extra length of providing visuals so that these children can learn. And then we encourage the usage of the local languages. I'm happy now that we have television stations and radio stations broadcasting in the local languages. And I think that's an extension of what we want to see. The government also should encourage traditional festivals, traditional figures should also take a lead. Our Obas, our Obis, our Emirs should also take the lead in revigorating the teaching of local languages.
But in promoting indigenous language, aren't there certain challenges that will come up? For instance, English cuts across, regardless of your ethnic group. But if we begin to promote indigenous language, wouldn't there be communication problem amongst Nigerians?
In Nigeria, we have solved that problem in Nigeria in that we now use Pidgin English. Pidgin English is adulterated, really, but now we can communicate in Pidgin English. As regards to local languages, I don't think we've done enough. I don't think we've done, especially in the primary schools. We We have not done enough. In the secondary schools, I don't think we have much. The problem really are the teachers. The problem are the teachers. Once we have the teachers, the children will be able to imbibe this culture, and then our libraries should be stocked with textbooks, and the curriculum should change, and the emphasis should be on written and spoken national languages.
But don't you think even the teachers or parents are helpless if the textbooks are written in English? Physics textbook, not in Yoruba, not in Igbo. Chemistry, not in Hausa. You know, are they not helpless? What do you think can be done to change that narrative until, you know, if I teach my children how to speak Igbo language, when they get to school, they don't speak that language. They have to speak English. So what can we do to ensure that on a national level we make it better or make it a practice to promote indigenous languages?
Now we're going back to government, and that has to do with policy. Government must insist that local languages should be used in communication and in teaching. And in, well, among communities, we can use pidgin, but government must take the lead. Government must take the lead by enforcing the fact that the local languages must be taught. Local languages must be encouraged. Local languages must be pushed forward in the interest of the nation and in the interest of the future generations.
How do we now begin to rewrite the English written books in local languages? Femi talked about the textbooks, the physics textbooks, the chemistry textbooks, and other textbooks. How do we begin to transcribe them in our local languages? That would take a whole lot, and lots of investment would need to go into that. Is that something that we can do, both in public schools and in private schools?
Now, it's something we can do, because now, if you say that local language should be taught, apart from the teachers, the libraries must be stocked. Apart from that, local communication. For instance, at a time, the Lagos State House of Assembly was thinking of using Yoruba as the official language. I think that thing has been shut down now. And that's government taking the lead again, like I said, and that will encourage. Government should also insist that official events organized by government should be broadcast, should be done, should be hosted in the local languages. And then our traditional rulers should also come out of their palaces and go to the local communities and emphasize the need that our local languages are dying and they must be resurrected.
I would like you to talk to us because you've seen several cases and you with your experience, you know, how much of influence has globalization, you know, had on us? How much of influence, you know, on our languages, even local language, even our culture, our way of dress? Interestingly, you're putting on, you know, a local attire, which I might not likely do that because of what I do. So how much of influence, and how do we begin to draw the line or change the narrative with this influence?
Thank you, Femi. Just across here, I was born at 127 Bambushi, just across there. And I belong to the Brazilian Descendants Association. I also belong to the Greater Campus, other groups. And we are concerned that the local dances, when you have carnivals, that our youth cannot do them anymore. In fact, around this area now, if you want to really do the carnival dance, the way it's done hundreds of years ago, you can only get people from the age of 75, 70s that can actually do it. The youth don't know about it. So there's a determined effort now, a concerted effort, a deliberate effort by some of us to ensure that we get these children taught these dance steps. Now that's as a result of globalization or westernization, where these children have thrown away all the cultural dances, all the cultural attributes that we have. And so there's room for concern.
Because we started today's conversation with workplace culture, workplace environment, we're going to wrap up with that. So let's look at promoting indigenous language in the workplace? Is it going to be an easy ride? Is it even possible you have different people in every workplace? Which language would you then adopt?
I would say English is the global and international language. For goodness sake, for any business transactions, let's stick to English. But as social functions, why not? At government functions, why not? This state belongs to Yorubas. And the Yorubas, you know, they dominate here. So
they dominate Lagos State.
Lagos State, Lagos Island, where we are now. So it doesn't make sense. We must abide by international rules. We must speak English for business and for transactions. But it will be difficult to go back to our local languages. And because don't forget that the municipality of Lagos, we have all sorts of people from different parts of the country. And it will be undemocratic to enforce Yoruba on them. That's the way I feel.
All right, from that last submission, we'll find that there are several challenges to the adoption of indigenous languages in the workplace and even nationally. But it is encouraged that at every level, social functions in the homes, that indigenous languages should be encouraged so they do not go extinct, just as some dances are already going extinct. Thank you very much, Bayo Olaoli, for talking with us this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That's how we wrap up today's edition of Early Exchange. Thank you for watching. I am Blessing Aichi. Coming up at 10 a.m. on Sook News is Business Insights. Tomorrow will be another time for you to join us on the show, 7 a.m. West African time. Thank you for watching.
Also put it in mind that the conversation continues on our social media platform and our YouTube platform. You can share your thoughts, you can like, comment, and even share some of the program. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now. Thank you, sir.
Come on, wrap me.